Welcome to the discussion video on this module for economic concepts. So what is the relationship of these economic concepts to the responsibility of strategic managers in handling the business affairs of the corporation? So since the responsibility of strategic managers is to be able to pinpoint decisions that relates to the overall um, long-term and short-range plans of the organization, it is imperative for them to understand the concepts in the economy which directly affects the organization they are handling. So more or less in your journey in your CPA board exam, in your review, and if you pursue having uh, the ranks of strategic managers, we need to understand these basic concepts, although these are already reiterations of what you have learned in your economics classes. So I have squeeze some of the questions that are probably will be asked in your review school and the Sipale, which you can look at now para makita natin kung anong mga concepts pa ba yung kailangan nating aralin all throughout. So, for this module on economic concepts, bibigyan ko lang kayo ng multiple choice questions, and then while we are answering these multiple choice questions, we are also discussing yung lahat ng concepts na madadaanan natin all throughout, because these yung economic concepts are more or less, these are conceptual questions in the board exam. During the review, these are only additions to your board exam questions. So you have to identify kung aling mga concepts yung kailangan nating aralin, because economics is a wide range of discipline. So let us move by looking at these multiple choices. So for item 1, let us read, and then we have a discussion on here. It is a sequence of economic activity in a nation's economy that is typically characterized by four phases: recession, recovery, growth, and decline, that repeat themselves over time. A, business cycle, operating cycle, accounting cycle, or life cycle. The answer for item 1 is business cycle. So when we refer to recession, recovery, growth, and decline, di ba ito yung stages on yung economic stages. So when we encounter recession, normally lahat the decline in the production of goods and services, decline in the prices. So recession is the worst of compared to a decline. When we say decline, these are just temporary decreases on the demands of a particular products or services. When we say recovery, this is the upward trend from decline to recovery, while growth, it means the sustained expansion of business. So when we look at these four phases, recession, recovery, growth, and decline, ang ibig lang niyang sabihin ay we are referring to the business cycle. Okay? Uh, Itong operating cycle kasi, di ba, ito yung when you look at the conversion of your inventory into cash, kung paano yung inventory mo ay magiging cash. So maraming pagdadaanan yan, magiging receivable muna, tapos then kapag naging receivable, you collect it and convert it to cash. So kung may cash ka naman, bibili ka na naman. So liability, pwedeng liability through credit purchases, pwede rin cash purchases. So, yun yung ibig sabihin ng operating cycle. Kapag accounting cycle naman, under your basic accounting, di ba? The entire accounting cycle is from the from the recognition of a transaction up to the final preparation of a financial statement, yun yung entire accounting cycle. The life cycle, ibig sabihin nitong life cycle is the life cycle of a product. Kasi ang nire-refer natin dito is the nation's economy. So kung nation's economy ang tinutukoy, we have to answer item A. Kasi more or less yung life cycle, this is focusing on a product, while the business cycle refers to the overall economy of a country. So the answer for item 1, for number 1, is A, business cycle. Number 2, it is the most unwelcome stage of the business cycle for business owners and consumers alike. It may be described as a period of reduced economic activity in which levels of buying, selling, production, and employment typically diminish. So, ano ibig sabihin ng most unwelcome stage of the business cycle? Ibig sabihin yung pinaka unfavorable or worst scenario. What is the worst scenario here? So kung titingnan mo, if you have already encountered some of these items on your economics, good. Pero kung hindi, I will provide some of the basic G's on understanding these terminologies. When we say inflation, di ba ito yung increases on the general prices of goods or services. Kapag ano yung kabaliktaran ng inflation? That is deflation. Kapag naman, di ba kapag inflation, meron tayong positive inflation rate. Tumataas yung general prices. Kapag deflation naman, kabaliktaran, bumababa yung general prices. So, kapag deflation, negative ang iyong inflation rate, kaya nga siya deflation. So, yun yung magkakontra. While disinflation ay inflation. Yung disinflation is also inflation rate. However, kapag sinabing disinflation, yung inflation rate ay decreasing gradually over time. Positive ang inflation rate mo, pero pababa. Kung dati 5, ngayon 4, naging 3, naging 2, disinflation kapag ganun yung scenario. Pero, andun ka pa rin sa level ng inflation stage. So, yun yung ibig sabihin nun. When we say recession, this is the worst scenario. Kasi, the production the productivity, the labor, the supply and demand, there are maraming worst scenario when we look at recession. Mababa ang production ng mga companies, ang labor ay tumataas ang wages, so hindi na kaya ng economy na because of the lower production, hindi na natin kayang i-support yung workforce natin. So kaya nagkakaroon ng mataas na unemployment rate. So alin dyan ang most unwelcome stage? So the answer for item 2 is A, recession. Kasi itong inflation, this is a contributing factor to recession. Okay? Yung deflation naman, kabaliktaran niya ng inflation. So this is more or less a favorable matter. Pero hindi on one instance lang kasi marami ring disadvantages yung deflation. Disinflation is also inflation. So yan ay contributing factor to recession. So ang most unwelcome is item A, recession. So proceed tayo with item 3. Also known as an upturn, this stage of the business cycle is the point at which the economy troughs out and start working its way up to better financial footing. A, growth, B, trough, C, recovery, and D, depression. So ano daw ito? Di ba yung trough, the peak and the trough, di ba? The concept of the peak. The peak is yung sa waves, yung nasa tip, yung nasa taas, yung peak. Yung nasa baba, yun yung trough. Ibig sabihin daw nito, nakakaalis na siya dun sa trough because the economy troughs out and start working its way up. So anong ibig sabihin nito? Anong stage daw ito? Is it recovery, depression, trough, or growth? The answer is A, growth. Kasi nakakaalis na siya doon sa mababang level of of the economy, and then it start working or to a better financial footing. Ano, the answer is C, recovery. Recovery yan. When we say growth, kasi more or less sustained yun eh. Sustained expansion kapag growth. Ito, nagsimula pa lang siya dun sa mababa and then eventually tumataas. Recovery pa lang yun. Kapag nasustain niya yung recovery niya, dun na papasok yung growth. The answer for item 3 as a correction is C, recovery. Number 4, this stage of the business cycle may be described as a point of sustained expansion, increased consumer confidence, and high levels of business activity. So the key term is sustained expansion. The answer is growth. 4 is the growth. Number 5, also referred to as the contraction or downturn, this stage of the business cycle basically marks the end of the period of growth. It is characterized by decreased levels of consumer purchases, especially of durable goods, and subsequently reduced production by businesses. So ano ito? Contraction or downturn, pababa. This stage of the business cycle marks the end of the period of growth. So ano yan? This is hindi naman yan growth. Hindi rin yan recovery. Hindi rin yan recession. So the answer is D, decline. So yung contraction from growth, tas kumbaga na-achieve niya yung maturity niya, magde-decline na yan. So 5 is item D. For item 5, the answer is D, decline. Number 6, which of the following is not one of the factors that shape business cycles? So, yung business cycles, as we already have defined, yung 4 phases yan, yung recession, recovery, growth, and decline. So, alin daw dito ang hindi nagko-contribute doon sa, or hindi siya factor para mabago yung business cycle? A, volatility of investment spending, B, technological innovations, C, fluctuations in government spending, and D, none of the above. So, tingnan natin. 1, yung volatility of investment spending. So, yung ibig sabihin lang nito is yung changes, the margin of changes doon sa paggastos natin related to investment. So, alin ba ang maaapektuhan dyan? Kasi kung hindi tayo nag-i-invest, pwedeng maapektuhan yung ating growth stages. So, yan ay isang factor in the business cycle. Next, technological innovation. If hindi tayo nag-i-innovate, pwedeng maapektuhan yung ating recovery or pwedeng mag-decline yung patronage sa ating product. So, yan ay isang factor din sa business cycle. Fluctuations in government spending. Kung pabago-bago yung government spending, mataas ang government spending ngayon, then after a quarter, biglang bumaba or bumagal yung government spending. So, it affects yung overall yung industry averages on spending. So, nakaka-affect din yan sa business cycle. So, the answer for 6 is D, none of the above. Okay? Number 7, in economics, it refers to a rise in the general level of prices of goods and services in an economy over a period of time. The general level of prices is the key term. Rise in the general level of prices. So 7 is A, inflation. Okay? 8. Inflation can have positive and negative effects on an economy. Positive effects of inflation include, okay, isa-isahin natin, loss in stability in the real value of money and other monetary items over time. Loss in stability in the real value. Yan ay negative effect ng inflation. Uncertainty about future inflation may discourage investment. This is also a negative effect kasi nadi-discourage niya yung mga investor. Okay? Shortages of goods if consumers begin hoarding in anticipation of price increases in the future. This is also a negative effect. So, nagpa-panic buying yung consumers because of an expected inflation or increase in the prices. Diba? So, yan ay negative. So, D, dapat ay answer na kasi lahat ay negative. So, D, mitigation of economic recessions and debt relief by reducing the real level of debt. So, anong ibig sabihin nito? Ang ibig sabihin niyan kasi, di ba the inflation makes the money, dahil sa inflation, yung pera mo ay mababa yung real value niya. Kasi nga, ang tataas ng presyo ng mga bilihin. So, bumababa yung real value ng money niya. So, kung meron kang utang, yung utang, bumababa rin ang kanyang real level or real value ng utang na yon. So, yun yung isang positive effect ng inflation for an individual na nangungutang. That it reduces the real level of debt. Okay? Number 9, economists generally agree that high rates of inflation and hyperinflation are caused by an excessive growth of the money supply. Central banks may control the size of the money supply through the following, except setting interest rates. So, anong tinatanong dito? Yun daw, high rates ng inflation and hyperinflation ay cause daw yan ng, remember, yung hyperinflation, this is worse than inflation, okay? Ang reason daw ng inflation and hyperinflation ay dahil ang maraming money supply in the economy. So yung mga central bank, they may control the size of the money supply. True, paano daw nila kokontrolin yung control ng money supply? This concept, ito ay pinag-aaralan under financial market course or some in advance on the latter part of your financial management. Dapat na indicate ito yung responsibility ng central banks on the money supply. So, alin daw dito, kung natatandaan mo or kung na-discuss yun sa'yo, dapat masasagot mo na itong item na ito. So, ano daw ang pwedeng gawin ng central bank to control yung money supply? So, lahat daw yan ay pwede, except lang, alin yung hindi. 1, setting the interest rates. Pwede ba siyang mag-identify o ma-require ng ganitong interest rates for banks? Yes. Next, setting of bank reserve requirements. Pwede ba siyang mag-require na, okay, bank, dapat ganito ang ratio ng yung bank reserves. Dapat 40 or 60%. Pwede ba? Yes. Conducting open market operations. Pwede ba siyang mag-allow na itong mga banking and financial facilities can do an open market operations para maka-encourage ng depositors or other individuals or stakeholders? Yes. Item D, requiring some banks to shut down. Pwede ba siyang mag-require na mag-shutdown na lang yung ibang bank para kumonte yung money supply? Hindi pwede. So, the answer is D. Yung shutdown. Bawal yan. Hindi yan pwede. 10. In economics, it refers to the decrease in the general price level of goods and services. A, disinflation. B, inflation. C, deflation. D, recession. So, diniscuss na natin ito kanina, yung differences ng apat na yan. Decrease in the general price level of goods. Decrease. So, ano yung, dahil yan ay decrease, kabaliktaran yan ng inflation. So, the answer is C, deflation. Next, which of the following statements is correct? Yung tama. A, deflation is the same as disinflation. Diniscuss na natin yan kanina, that is wrong. Deflation is the decrease in the general price level of goods and services, while disinflation is also inflation, however, at a decreasing rate. Pababa yung kanyang, nasa inflation stage ka pa rin dyan sa disinflation, pero pababa yung rates mo. Okay? For B, deflation occurs when the annual inflation rate falls below 0. Ibig sabihin, negative yung inflation rate. Tama ba yon? Yes. Kasi 'di ba, kapag below 0 yung inflation rate mo, ibig sabihin negative ang inflation rate mo, deflation 'yon. Resulting in an increase in the real value of money. Ano yung tinutukoy na increase in the real value of money? Yung deflation. Kapag daw negative ang inflation rate mo, ini-increase mo daw yung real value of money. Is it correct? Kapag inflation ka, yung value ng dahil mataas yung presyo ng mga bilihin, yung value ng money mo, maliit lang. Lumiliit yung purchasing power mo dahil mataas ang inflation rate, mataas ang presyo ng mga bilihin, yung 100 pesos mo ang mabibili lang kakaunti dahil mataas ang presyo ng mga bilihin. Pero kung negative or baliktarin mo, it increases the real value of money daw. Is it correct? Yes, it is correct. So answer for 11 is B. Okay? Tingnan mo na lang yung item C at item D because these are direct reverse lang nung earlier statements. Okay? Number 12, a deflationary spiral is a situation where, so when we say a deflationary spiral, so i-imagine mo yung spiral. 'Di ba? From top pababa yan hanggang sa lumiit ng lumiit. Ano daw ang situation na pwedeng i-represent ng isang spiral, yung deflationary spiral. Kapag deflationary pababa, yung negative ang iyong inflation rate. So tumataas ang real value of money. Look at this. A decrease in the production lead to decreases in prices, which in turn lead to lower wages and demand. Parang pwede yung item A. Look at B. Decreases in prices lead to lower production, which in turn leads to lower wages and demand, which leads to further decreases in prices. Parang pwede din. Pero tingnan mo yung pinagkaiba ng item A at B. Yung 1, yung item A, ang sabi niya, it lead to decreases in prices. So, mauunang mag-decrease yung prices, tsaka daw, bababa yung wages, yung pasweldo at tsaka demand. Pero sa B naman, dahil mababa yung production, bababa yung demand for workers, therefore, pwede rin bumaba yung wages, and then, bababa yung prices. Okay. The item C, decreases in prices lead to higher production. Tataas naman daw. Dahil bumaba yung prices, decreases in prices lead to higher production, which in turn leads to higher wages, which results to higher prices. Okay? Sa D naman, increase in prices lead to a vicious cycle and a problem exacerbates in its own cause. Ano ibig sabihin yan? Increases in prices lead to a vicious cycle. So parang paulit-ulit na cycle lang, and the problem exacerbates its own cause. Yung problem, siya na, kumbaga, it cures on its own. Yun yung ibig niyang sabihin dyan. So, ano ang condition ng isang deflation spiral? Diba, when we say deflation, there are decreases in the prices. Pag deflation, decreases in prices. So, kung titingnan mo, yung item C, eliminate mo kaagad yan kasi magre-result ka ng increase in prices, deflationary spiral ang tinatanong. So, eliminate mo si C. Etong D, this cannot be an answer because under the deflation, it can be cured by making an intervention on the market. So hindi pwedeng it is just a vicious cycle and a problem of its own cause. So D, C, and D are eliminated. So tingnan mo lang itong A and B. Ang pinagkaiba lang yan ay yung sinong mauuna, yung decrease in prices ba o yung lower wages and demand. Remember, the end goal, no, not goal. The definition of deflation is the decrease in the general price level of goods and services. Therefore, the final indicator of a deflation is a decrease in the prices. Hence, dapat yun yung end nung definition netong deflation spiral. In which case, si item B. Kasi, on item A, sabi niya, magdi-decrease yung prices tapos yun yung magkukos ng lower wages and demand, which is not. Under a deflationary spiral, the lower production will lead to a lower wages and demand that will eventually lead to the decreases in prices. Kasi yan yung final definition or the final result of a deflation. Yun yung final indicator ng deflation yung decrease in prices. So, dapat yun yung end ng spiral. Kumbaga, yun yung output noong deflationary spiral. So, the item for number 12, the answer for number 12 is B. 13. If both the supply and the demand for a good increase, the market price will. Kung tumaas daw yung supply, tumaas pa yung demand, ano mangyayari? Yung market price, tataas ba, bababa, o hindi magbabago? For item 13, we cannot tell by just simply indicating that the supply and demand increase. Dapat mayroong amounts or quantities for us to be able to analyze and compute for this. So in this scenario, 13, the answer is D. Not predictable with only these facts. Okay? Number 14. As interest rates, when the demand for a product is elastic, a decrease in the price of a product will. So this is just a review. When we say elastic, kapag elastic yung product, kapag yung demand sa product ay elastic, ibig sabihin, pag elastic, ganito ang scenario. Kapag tinaasan mo yung presyo ng product na yan, doon ako bibili sa iba. So, ganun ang mindset kapag ang demand sa product ay elastic. Kapag tinaasan mo yung presyo niyan, dito na lang ako bibili sa alternative B o kaya kay alternative C. Kapag ang product ay inelastic, kahit nataasan mo pa yung presyo ng product na yan, or kahit babaan mo pa, sa'yo pa rin ako bibili kasi of several factors. Pwedeng yaang product mo is a need and not a want. Or pwedeng the market is a monopolized market. Pwedeng ikaw lang ang nagbebenta ng ganyang klaseng product. So the scenario here is, ang demand daw sa product ay elastic. A decrease in the price. So elastic, so pwedeng magbago-bago. Pwedeng yung customer bumili sa iba kapag tinaasan mo ang presyo niyan. Ang sabi, a decrease in the price. Binawasan niya yung price of a product will. Anong magiging effect niyan? It will increase your revenue. Tama ba? So, kung elastic yung demand sa product, binabaan mo pa yung presyo ng product mo, syempre, sa'yo na ako bibili kasi malamang yung iba ay pare-parehas kayo ng dahil elastic yung demand dyan sa product na yan, malamang ay magkakalapit ang presyo ng bentahan ng product na yan. So, dahil binabaan mo, sa'yo na ako bibili. Or baka yung bumibili dun sa ibang alternatives ay sa'yo pa bumili. So, what will be the effect? It will increase the total revenue. 14 is B. 15. Price, as interest rate increases, pag tumataas yung interest rates on the money, the demand for money decreases. The demand for money increases. The demand for money remains constant and none of the above. So kapag mga ganitong cases, dapat mayroong answer yan kasi item A, B, and C are exact opposites of the other. Pag tumaas yung interest rate, mangungutang ka pa ba? Yun lang ang logic dyan. Halimbawa, magpapautang ako. Kapag tinaasan ko ang interest rate, yung demand mo dun sa perang uutangin, mangungutang ka pa ba? So kung tumaas yung interest rate, hindi ako sa'yo mangungutang. Maghahanap ako ng ibang mas mababa yung interest rate. Okay? So what's the answer? A, the demand for money decreases. Okay. I think I have to end the discussion here. Please continue on the next discussion video for item 16 and more. Thank you.